asking that question. After having that conversation with the SABC men, one of the things that the SABC men recognized was that the men's voice is the most powerful voice that could also come in and possibly combat this scourge of gender-based violence. And therefore, they committed to the following. They will speak up whenever there is instances of gender-based violence that are emerging. They will participate actively and proactively to combat gender-based violence. They'll take responsibility and they'll be present in their children's lives. They'll educate our young boys to never participate in any instance of gender-based violence. Instead, they must report it. They'll never ever participate or witness any instance of sexual violence or sexual abuse, especially against the minors. They'll stop bullying. They'll stop body shaming. They'll stop discrimination. This is the commitment that I got from the SABC men from yesterday. I am therefore looking forward to today's panel discussion, which I think will set the tone for what the fireside chats will be all about. In conclusion, we would like to use this platform today to further pledge our support and commitment to continuously engage with other entities to combat gender-based violence. In our concerted efforts of making South Africa a better place, we strongly believe that we can eradicate this scourge if we collaborate and form enabling partnerships. I pledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Binza, for your words and your comments and your message to the fight against GBV. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest speaker, Mr. Ace Ngobo, who is the chair of the Ubuntu Transformation Foundation. Mr. Ngobo is very passionate about the fight against GBV, but I don't want to say too much. I'm going to leave that up to him to tell us exactly why he's here and what our program is all about. Thank you so much. Please can we give Mr. Ngobo a round of applause.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. When the president, who is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of this country, gives a directive, patriotic citizens have no option but to toe the line and respond not in words, but with action that can display their patriotism. So when we listened to the president as a foundation at the SONA 2024, calling upon men to be at the forefront of the fight against GBV, we felt that as a foundation, now is the time to enter the space. Our foundation for the past 3 decades has been primarily focused on community development, especially in rural areas, with a particular focus on household food security. We have observed over the past decade or so a very necessary focus on the victim. And when my board decided that we should extend our mandate and add our voice to the fight against GBV, we took a strategic decision that A lot has been done to train the girl child on how to use a pepper spray, even going to the extent of giving them firearm training. A lot has been done in training the girl child that as soon as you see the sun setting, go and lock the gate. Go and lock the burglar guards. Try and even lock yourself inside your room. Because somehow we've allowed for the creation of a society that has waged war against women. We've allowed for a society that has made it an extreme sport for a woman to live in this country freely, walk down the streets at whatever time of the night. It has become an extreme sport. There needs to be a day when we stop seeing the gruesome murder of women in this country. I know all of us, when that happens, we cringe. And we ask ourselves this question: what goes on in the mind of a man who mutilates a woman, in certain cases chops her up, puts her in a bag, and goes to a rubbish dump to throw away the remains of that woman? What happens in the mind of a man who does that? We all have that question. And then last week, the Human Sciences Research Council answered the question via a scientific research, whose outcome is that whilst we thought that alcohol and substance abuse is the primary driver of GBV, in fact, it is man's mental health issues that are the primary driver. And alcohol becomes an ancillary sanctuary that they go to. But the primary driver is that as men, there's something wrong with our brains. And that is why our focus tries to shift from the victim to the perpetrator. Commendable work has been done over the past decade or so on equipping the victim on how to deal with the scourge of GBV. The time has now come for us to focus on men. The reality of the situation is that even though there are men who suffer violence at the hands of women, it's a negligible percentage. We feel for them, yes. It shouldn't be happening, yes. But the majority of cases, the majority of incidents of GBV are perpetrated by us as men. It's reality. Those who work in the anti-crime space know that when you go to schools and other gatherings, there's a tendency to bring in an ex-convict to speak against crime. We as the UTF won't adopt that kind of approach. I'm not saying we are not going to work with men who will say, I used to beat up my wife or my girlfriend, and now I've changed. We are not adopting that approach. We know for a fact that in every community, there is at least one exemplary man. The only thing is that we have not embarked on a campaign to unearth those exemplary men, showcase them to the nation, and say, look at his behavior, look at his conduct, and tell your boy child to emulate this man. That's what this is about. Stats SA issued a report that 42% of boys in this country and young men, 42% are growing in households where there is a single parent and the parent is a woman. 42%. For whatever reason, we have abandoned our children as men. We are not going to go out there and grab anybody by the scruff of the neck and force them to go and carry out their responsibilities as fathers. But through this project, we are going to create an open vault of role models. We are going to unearth from every single community, from every street in a township, from every village. We are going to unearth and showcase exemplary men, so that even that mother struggling to straddle the line between motherhood and fatherhood because she is alone raising this boy child can then have this open vault to point to and say, my son, choose your role models. And I'm saying plural because today's boy child, unlike us when we were growing up, is a very complicated individual. One role model will never suffice to cover all the multiple facets of the modern boy's life. Hence, we want to create this open vault of multiple role models. In their thousands, perhaps in their millions, who we can showcase to every boy child in the country. So that as a single mother sitting with a boy child, instead of going on social media searching for gossip, you can have a session, just 1 hour per day. You go on social media and you're scrolling down and looking at the profiles of the men that through this project we are going to unearth and create an open vault for those boy children who have no father figures in their lives to choose 2, 3, 5, even 10 role models and say, today I'm checking what he's doing. I'm checking what he has posted. I'm following him because I want to emulate his behavior and conduct. Through this campaign, an active campaign of collecting millions of signatures from men who are making a pledge, not only to never engage in acts of GBV, but fight it in their sphere of influence and spread the word that they must sign the pledge, and it's a lifetime commitment that they must make. And through that process, we hope that we will create zero space for men who want to engage in GBV. If you look at that logo, the logo of the Men's Fireside Conversations, the main theme on that logo is the infinity sign, which speaks to the fact that no more should our voices be heard during the 16 days of activism against GBV. We are today launching and adding to whatever exists out there that is a 24/7, 365 project. Through this project, we are going to keep the conversation against GBV in the mouths and ears of every citizen of this country and beyond on a daily basis. We are not going to stop. The portal where the online signature campaign runs will remain open and perpetual. Because when we launch our provincial chapters next year in 2025, we want to be able to deliver this year to the president and say, we've collected 1 million signatures when he closes 16 days of activism. When we come back to Gauteng on the 14th of February 2025, yes, 14th February, We've always spoken about a fictitious men's conference taking place on the 14th of February. This one will be real. We want to be able to announce that we've now moved from 1,200,000 to 3 million. When we go to Limpopo in March, we want to be able to say we've hit 5 million. And we are going to speak about this on a daily basis until we are able to deliver to the president 20 million signatures and declare that there is no more space for any man in this country who seeks to engage in GBV. In my mother tongue, we have a term that we use when somebody is embarking on deviant behavior. Sithi ngumkanja. Ngumkanja. And when that label is thrown on your forehead, you know that you are an outcast. We want to reach a stage where it is not normal, as it is today, for us to see on the news that one more woman has died. The Minister of Police issued the latest crime stats. 2,513 women died in this country between April and September. There's something wrong with that picture. There's something wrong with that picture. We cannot continue to be comfortable anymore. We may not have been the best of men in our lives, but we are not going to wait until we achieve sainthood before we do something and create and shape men that are going to be better than us, men that will be that which we were not able to be in our own lives. It starts now, and it won't end. It's going to be continuous, and we're very happy that the SABC has thrown its full might behind this rolling program. We're happy to have Arena Holdings giving us a full inventory on their multiple platforms to carry the message on a daily basis, to say, enough is enough. We have to change. And we're happy to have what I call in government the mother department, the Department of Social Development, the department that is there in the life of an individual, in the lives of people in a household, in every community, taking care of our people. Just as the situation is with every government department, unable most of the time to showcase the good work that they're doing. This is the platform. It's a rolling program. We are not going to stop until every GBV perpetrator ibe ngumkanja, an outcast in society. On the 7th of December, at my humble ancestral home deep in the rural areas of the Eastern Cape, we are having the inaugural fireside conversations. The disintegration of the traditional family structure, which saw us as young boys knowing that every evening, once all the cattle are inside the kraal, we should go to the main hut and Granny will light a fire at that central fireplace. And all of us would gather around the fire because the class would start. That is when wisdom, knowledge, and expertise was transferred from generation to generation around the fireplace. Most of the time, through folklore. The stories that were told there were highly educational, told by professors graduated from the University of Life. Professors, most of whom never set foot inside a classroom, but could lecture valuable lessons to their children and grandchildren around the fireplace. one of the key items on the agenda on that day is for the Minister of Social Development, a woman, will symbolically light a fire, a real fire, at the center of the amphitheater where the conversations will start. So that we can go back to that which made us a nation of loving people, nation of respectful people, a nation of men who existed to protect those that looked up to them as elder brothers and fathers and husbands. A nation of leaders. That's what we're going back to with this program. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, I do not have a speech because this is what I have defined for myself and everybody else who is part of this until I take my last breath. And I don't need to have a speech in order to do that because I have internalized it. I invite every man in this country to sign the pledge. Go to firesideconvos.co.za, sign the pledge, and you'll see when you get there, it behoves you to make a lifetime commitment. And the confirmatory email that comes back to you has a badge which says, I've signed the pledge. I've made my commitment. And we're saying to men, take that badge, it's a digital graphic, brag about it, invite others to also sign the pledge, so that from here on, we can be a society where GBV perpetrators go mganja. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ngobo. Your speech and your love and passion for the fight against GBV is very, very commendable. For us as SABC and our partners as well, we're really, really happy to be part of this initiative. And I would like to call on our other stakeholders, Mr. Lyndon Barents, who is the MD for Strategic Partnerships at Arena Holdings, to please come and just take a seat here, as we're going to engage in our own fireside conversation this morning in the form of a panel discussion. So Mr. Barents, please can you come take a seat? May I also ask for Ms. Siza Mahangwe, who is the Acting Director General from the National Department of Social Development, Welfare Services, to also come and take a seat. And of course, lastly, Mr. Ace Ngobo, for you to take a seat as well as we start our own fireside conversation this morning. Thank you. Colleagues, again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're really honored to have you today. And I'd just like to start off by asking Ms. Mahangwe, as a member of the Department of Social Development, what are some of the programs that the department is doing in the fight against GBV?
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I appreciate this program and us being part of this. I believe that we are also making history in our own way by, engaging in this and also working with unusual stakeholders. Normally we work with the NGOs and we do one thing and they say and expect different outcomes. So I believe that by working with a diverse group would really make inroads in areas that we're not able to do so. Coming back to your question, let me start by indicating the framework that we are working with, the legal framework that we're working with, which is the NSP. It's important to emphasize that as a country, much as we have high levels of gender-based violence, we have a legal framework that we're working with, meaning that we have a blueprint, we have a plan It's unlike, you know, a country where you don't have a plan, you don't know where you start, there are no guidelines, you know, you have not even, you know, spell out priorities that all of you must try to work towards in order for us to, you know, curb the scourge of gender-based violence. So I want to, you know, acknowledge that work that we have done as government, that at least we have a consensus plan, which is NSP on gender-based violence, and that plan seeks to, you know, set priorities for the country, and it does acknowledge the high levels of gender-based violence, and it says to us, these are the 6 pillars that would like you to contribute towards in order for us to eradicate gender-based violence. So part of our work as the Department of Social Development is located within 2 pillars of this NSP. It's Pillar 2, which talks to prevention and building social cohesion. It's more on awareness, the work that Wabungobo has been talking about, you know, having conversations about this, something that is abnormal, making it trying to denormalize what is abnormal and all of that. Those, it's part of Pillar 2. We contribute towards that. I'll just mention a couple of programs that we do. And we're also contributing or leading actually Pillar 4. Pillar 4 is more on response, care and support. It's like to say, now that there's a problem, much as the priority is to curb it, is to prevent, but what do we do with the people that are victimized at the stage? Are we able to have, do we have responsive mechanism? Are we able to provide support immediately? Are we able to sustain, you know, the good work that we are doing? Are we able to contain victims? You know, those are the things. And are we able to support victims that are going through court? You know, they don't, when they go to court, are we preventing them from secondary victimization? Because I'm a victim, I have to go to court, and I have to convince the court that I am a victim. The perpetrator does not have a responsibility to, you know, go out there and say, I haven't done it. The onus is not on them. So those are some of the things to say, as government, are we sensitive to that, and what is it that we're doing? So just to summarize, we're doing quite a lot in terms of those pillars. Like I've said, for Pillar 2, we've got programs like Men for Change, Championing Change. We've got Men and Boys. The list is endless. I don't want to talk about the list, but what is important is that we are having this conversation, and by having this conversation, it's part of, you know, working together as a collaborative issue, because we are saying it cannot be resolved by the state alone. It cannot be resolved by communities alone. It cannot be resolved by NGOs alone. It is everyone's business. So for us to really be on top of it, it has to be everyone's business in terms of the programs that we are doing and having those strategic partners in order for us to eradicate gender-based violence. Let me pause there.
Thank you very much, Ms. Makangwe. Just further to what you have also mentioned, I know also Mr. Ngobo also mentioned very briefly in his speech about GBV and alcohol. As the department, what link have you seen between the two?
Yes, initially, we've been trying to address issues of gender-based violence in silos. You know, most we like to work in silos. We put things in blocks and say, this is this, this is this. But with time, as we are reviewing our work, and the good thing is that we work with international community, it's saying to us, whatever the interventions that we are doing must be evidence-based. If they're not evidence-based, how do you know if they're working? You could be wasting so much resources and your time on something that is not working. So when we start looking at the evidence, because we're trying to, you know, align and review our programs and make sure that they're evidence-based, that's when a lot of research, we do not do it ourselves, because there's a lot of, you know, research institutions like the MRC, HSRC, and many other universities that have an interest. They always commission various researchers that are helping us as a department. So most of the research is saying to us, there is an intersectionality between gender-based violence and substance abuse. And substance abuse, I agree with Wabungobo that it's not the core, but it's one of the drivers of gender-based violence, in a sense that men that are abusing substances, there are always violence towards their partners. And most of the time, the breakout of violence happens during the time when people are intoxicated. It's not like violence helps them to do that, but it's just, it enables them to actually do what they already plan to do. So those are the things to say. We need to look at both. And secondly, we've seen a lot of women becoming addicted to substances. Women. Why? It's because most of them, they're escaping the violence, situations that they find themselves. So what do? They numb themselves, to say, I'll just drink and forget about it. And that's how they become addicted. Before they know it, they started as social drinkers, tried to escape, but they end up being addicted. And the sad part is that as a community, we stigmatize them. Secondly, we justify we justify the behavior of the perpetrators and say, it's because you are drinking, that is why they are beating you. It's because you are drinking, that is why you are going through what you are going through. You are neglecting your children because of you are addicted. So those are the intersectionality that we are looking at. So we are therefore saying, when we are intervening, we are not saying you all have capacity to with both. We might be a specialist in substance abuse, but not necessarily on gender-based violence or vice versa. But we are saying, when you do the screening, assess all the elements so that you are able to refer before a program progresses further to a point where it's uncontrollable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mahangwe. I'm going to give Mr. Barons a chance as well, just to give a couple of words. As the MD for Strategic Partnerships at Arena Holdings, so what is your view on the role of media in the fight against GBV?
As part of media, we have a responsibility as a citizen, as a group, to be part of this. Firstly, we applaud ACE for his efforts. He's blowing the whistle on GBV this time round, and the way he's using his equity that is built up in another environment for the good of the greater community. And I think it's efforts like that that we should highlight people like that as the role models and what they are doing. So well done, ACE. We're very happy also that we can work with government department. Often within our spaces we highlight the things that goes wrong in society, and it's fantastic to talk about the positive things. So as Mr. Binza said, part of the media should be to inform and to educate and to entertain. We take it a step further to say that we must also inspire as media, and we must be that platform of hope, not only talking about all the bad things that happens in society. Of course, our role is to inform people about what's happening, but more important is for us to be able to be a platform of hope. And so we partner with this, not as a pleasure to be a partner, but as a responsible citizen, to be able to say, how do we take the message out there? How do we, highlight positive role models? How do we contribute to the transformation and the evolvement of our society to be a much healthier society? So we're very pleased to be part of this.
So much, Mr. Barons. Just further to your comment as well, as Arena Holdings and as a partner with this great initiative, what initiatives is Arena Holding also have in place, whether it be for perpetrators or victims, what programs do you have in place?
Well, right now we're going to support this fireside convos with him around the country. So we'll be part and parcel of that, whereby we will convene young men to consider how to be able to contribute to a more positive society. Secondly, we'll be carrying a lot of the information that comes out of that, and to make sure that we highlight the site where people can pledge, to make it easier for people to get online as far as that is concerned. And then just to tell the stories. We have been, very active. Our former editor of the Sowetan Mabisa, has always highlighted these issues, so as part of our responsibility. What we've also done in the past is maybe what we call supporting programs in terms of bursaries to young women, to empower them, etc.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Behrens. I'd also like now to hand over to Mr. Ngobo as well. Just in terms of I just love the way that you told us about the inspiration behind the whole Fireside Conversations, project. So as the catalyst of this project, and the history that you gave us, please can you just give us a little bit more in terms of what you expect from, the men out there that we see as, as the people that need to really also put their hands up and fight against GBV?
Now, look, as I said earlier, there is no absence of role models in this country. The majority of men in South Africa conduct themselves properly. The majority of men treat women with respect. The only challenge that we have is that when we speak about men and how they treat women, we speak about those who ill-treat women. Because the stories that get told are stories of abuse, are stories of murder, are stories of assaults. That is what gets told. Now, without really grasping it, we created a national psyche which says the typical South African man is violent towards women. And so we want to take the positive side. As Lyndon says, let's be inspirational. Let's find those men out there who are exemplary and showcase them to the nation. Let's change the narrative that by and large, your typical South African man does not respect a woman, will body shame a woman, will assault at any given opportunity, and will probably even kill her. That narrative derives from a very small percentage of men. But it's a narrative that is sustained because, yes, the media must inform the public about what's happening. It's time to also inform the public about the good things that men are doing on a daily basis, but lack the platform to brag about those. We're giving, through this MFC project, we're giving men the right to brag. We're giving them a platform to brag about how well they treat their wives, how well they treat their girlfriends, how well they treat their mothers, their aunts, and neighbors. Let us brag about the good men in society on a continuous basis. We've spoken to Arena Holdings, and they've chosen Sowetan as the lead entity in this program, so that when we go to each province, we come out of that province having asked the people of the province to nominate exemplary men in their societies, in their communities. If we go to Western Cape, we come back carrying a provincial awardee that will call the Western Cape Man of the Year. We go to the Free State and come back with a man that will be the Sowetan Free State Man of the Year. And from each province come back with at least one man out of thousands that will have been nominated. And we say to the nation, behind these 9 men, there are millions of others who are exemplary and conduct themselves in a way that you can ask your boy child to emulate. And then at the next national MFC, from amongst the 9, we say here is the 2025 Sowetan Man of the Year. And we go on and do that over and over again until every man wants to be like those exemplary men. And we create outcasts out of that.
Yeah. That's absolutely fantastic, Mr. Ngobo. Thank you so much. And you mentioned, the point about having us and having these men bragging, giving them a platform to brag about their, about the fight against GBV. But with the fireside conversations, what message do you want to give, or what drive do you want to have for the actual perpetrators, for them to, understand the reasons behind, like you were saying earlier, that it's actually a mental thing that drives people to do what they do. As much as there's the substance abuse that also drives people to do what they do in terms of GBV. But what are we going to be doing as part of the program to actually speak to the perpetrators, not only just focusing on the victims?
Perhaps one of the reasons why we have not won this war yet is because we've been focused on the marquee approach. That's what I call it. The marquee approach. Have a marquee, put chairs, put speakers, put a podium, speak to 200 men. We've not really harnessed the power that the proliferation of online platforms grants to all of us, to rather speak to millions of men than 200 men in a marquee. In fact, on the 7th of December, the amphitheater that I have there at home can only accommodate 80 people, 20 of whom will be speakers and the VIP guests from government and our commercial partners. We're having only 60 delegates. That's because our focus is not on those who are able to attend. We are producing a TV production so that this content can be available to any media house free of charge. We are never going to commercialize this thing. We're saying whoever captures footage, be it the SABC, Arena Holdings, the department via DST TV, or our own in-house production unit as the foundation, all that footage, both the live feed and the raw footage which may be archived, must be made available to any media house that wants to produce whatever format they can produce, because we are moving away from the marquee approach. We want to speak to millions of men out there every time, some of whom suffer from mental health issues, as the HSRC says, which drives them to abuse alcohol and other intoxicating substances. And when they are intoxicated, they see a woman as a target of solving their mental health issues. We are going to choose topics every time when we hold these MFCs in every province that seek to address the core of the problem. Topics that seek to admit that we are mad. There's something wrong. There are loose wires that are not correctly connected. And so that even that one who's engaged in GBV because there are unresolved issues can then listen to these masterclass presentations from people who have gathered a lot of experience in life. Let me just briefly touch on something. There is one thing that we, especially as African men, have failed to grapple with. And I don't know how the DSD treats this. The feeling of emasculation that men have because the modern woman is educated, is independent in all ways. We
we were indoctrinated from birth to understand our role, not only as protectors, but as providers. Now, when you find yourself in a situation where your status as a provider is taken away from you because this woman earns more money than you, you feel emasculated. And now, because you still retain your physical prowess, you seek to impose your authority, not by being a protector and provider, because you're no longer a provider, by showing your physical prowess to violence. It's one of the issues we've got to discuss. Financial violence, I think that's what it's called, and it goes both ways. So I'm just giving an inkling of the kinds of things that we want to discuss, because men in those positions don't know themselves why all of a sudden they've become violent. They don't know the subliminal underlying issues which drive them to become violent. They were not violent before because they attained the status of a provider, and later on, this recipient of the provision services becomes more powerful than the provider. And now there's confusion. And this man starts abusing alcohol, starts becoming violent. Let me stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Ngobo. Almost just in closing, I'd like to go back to Ms. Mahangwe. Just in terms of the department, what message or what view of importance would you like to give for the role of men in the fight of GBV? In fact, I'll open the floor to all three of you, but just in terms of the department, arena, and then again, Mr. Ngobo, just in closing.
Yeah, with us as a department, we are saying we need men to be part and parcel of the solution. They cannot be the bystanders when they are at the same time in the forefront of perpetrating violence. So we are saying they must be part of the solution. It's very important. Number two, we are also saying, yes, of course, we do acknowledge the reasons why people respond differently to issues. For instance, the issue of mental health, the issue of trauma that, maybe as children they've experienced and it was never dealt with. So now, therefore, when you are growing up, it begins to manifest in different ways and forms and shapes in your life. So we are saying as a department, we need to also work with boys, not only with men. It's already late with men. So let's start with boys, because boy child go through a lot. And we don't focus on them. We focus on girl child because we're trying to empower girl child so that they're able to take informed decisions as they are going through their relationships. So, but now we as a department are saying it's equally important to focus on boy child so that we can deal with the challenges that they are experiencing without wasting time. A couple of months we conducted dialogues with boy child. And we were shocked with things that they were saying to us. And they said, I've never, shared this with anyone. My mom doesn't know. My father doesn't know. I went through this trauma. I was, violated. And because I'm a boy, I can't talk about it. How am I going to say it and all of that? So you can see that if, care is not taken, this child is going to grow up being angry and having so many behavioral challenges. And we won't know. By the time we get to know exactly what happened, you find that we lost the child when the child was 10 years old. While at the time we are intervening, he's only 25 and he has killed the entire family. So these are the real issues that we are dealing with, and we are saying it is important to work with men because they are key stakeholders, and we believe that the solution lies with them. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Barents?
Yeah, from our side, and also my personal view is that it's important for us to work with boys and men, because where do the perpetrators come from, right? So we have to try and work with young people. But this issue has been going on for many, many years, where we realized that we need to work with boys and life skills. And we haven't done it as a society, you know. And so, not to repeat what Asa said, but the kind of profile of a guy was this macho guy more than anything else. So I think we have to work with that. If you look at statistics, there are more girls in debating societies at school. There are more girls doing science at university compared to many, many years ago. There are more women getting into executive positions. So all of those things have a kind of a psychological effect, you know, on the profile of the modern young man. So I think it's important that we do work with young men. We, in our own family, we started a charity about 20 years ago called Dad Fund. And then we started Dream Girls, you know, about 12 years ago, where we worked with girls and to give them some form of dream. And we realized there that we need to work with boys, and that is why we were excited to be part of this program as well, going forward. So I think young men need to kind of reshape their thinking and their profile of what a man and its role in society is all about. And we as the media must play that role. Maybe in closing, when you said you're closing, so can I read something if I don't mind? And I just thought of it this morning as I was coming here. And this was found on a tombstone of somebody. And it says, "When I was young and free and my imagination had no limits, I dreamed of changing the world. As I grew older and wiser, I discovered the world would not change. So I shortened my sights somewhat and decided to change only my country. But it too seemed immovable. And as I grew into my twilight years, in one last attempt, I settled to changing only my family, those closest to me, but alas, they who would have none of it. And now, as I lie on my deathbed, I suddenly realize, if I had only changed myself first, then by example I would have changed my family. From their inspiration and encouragement, I would then have been able to better my country, and who knows, I may have even changed the world." So it starts with each one of us. Each young man, each boy, we need to start doing the right things and doing it in the right way. And then as those millions of signatures and millions of people doing it, not only in South Africa, but across the world, to really treat women in the right manner.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barents. That message on that tombstone is quite moving. It's actually very touching that somebody actually realized, the importance of starting with me. Lastly, Mr. Ngcobo, if you can just have your last closing words before we open the floor to questions.
I don't know what we will achieve with this. But if its outcome is such that when we describe a typical South African man, we use only words like caring, respectful, protective, then we will have achieved our objective. The narrative right now is the opposite. But I do believe that by starting with ourselves and extending it to our immediate circle of influence, and by utilizing the power of social media and other platforms, the power of radio, together with the SABC, the power of the printed word, both on a physical newspaper and an online platform, the power of the voice, we can reach that stage. And that's the only dream that I have. That one day we can look back and say, the South African man that we describe today is not the one we started with on the 27th of November, 2024.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ngobo. Thank you, Ms. Mahangwe and Mr. Barons. I'm going to open up the floor to some questions, on the floor, as well as online, if we've got any questions online. I'll start here in the front. Thanks.
Sanmanan, I'm an asker. How many questions am I allowed? Okay. I have 4, but it's fine. I'll do 3. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. My first question, I'm going to just structure them according to the panel. I've got 2 for Mr. Ngobo. Firstly, thank you so much, Mr. Ngobo, who is not paying attention to me right now.
I just ask that you introduce yourself before you ask.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry. Sanmanani Ikama Mbata from City Press. Before I ask my questions, I really just want to say thank you to Ubab Ngolbo. I wish I could say you were my dad. I wish I could say you were my uncle, because listening to you speak just now was awe-inspiring. Thank you so much. Okay, so 2 questions for you. Firstly, you mentioned that the girl child has been trained on using pepper spray, on taking care of herself. I'm not really aware of any organizations that do this. I know that in my personal capacity, I'm not aware of it. I personally walk around with my pepper spray on my hand with the finger on the nozzle already. And a lot of the times, I get very weird reactions from people, not even men, just general people. So I don't feel that we have really tapped into educating young girls about the use of pepper spray, and also just men sometimes even get mad to say, why you having a pepper spray? What are we going to do to you? Are we even interested in you? So I just want to find out from you if there are any organizations that are doing that. I would love to tell that story. Okay, that was actually not a question. All right, so the question actually is that, okay, a lot has been said, really, in terms of men saying they're promising to stop abuse, they're going to stop shaming women, educating young boys. I feel like we are sort of rehashing things that we've already discussed many, many times before. We are taking the same approach and hoping for a different result. So what I want to find out is where is the disconnect exactly? And how is rehashing these conversations going to help where it hasn't done so in the past? Then I'm going to move on to Mr. Barons. Hi, Mr. Barons. So my question to you is, how is the partnership going to tap into deep rural communities who have no access to television, no access to Wi-Fi, especially where people don't have the English fluency to be able to read Sowetan? Because it's been said that a larger portion of gender-based violence cases are not reported than those that actually are. So I think people that don't have access to these resources are also they account for a lot of those stats. So I just like to find out, Uguti, like, how are we going to step into those communities? And then for Ms. Mahangwe, my question is, I'm not really sure if you're the right person, but I'm asking this because you spoke about the court system in the beginning of your speech. Gender-based violence has got the lowest conviction rate of any other crime globally. When these cases get thrown out, the general reaction is she lied. How are we going to conscientize people to understand that it wasn't thrown out because she lied, it was thrown out because of the lack of evidence? And a follow-up on that, why are we taking an approach of a mediation between the families in the case of gender-based violence? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ngobo, do you want to answer?
No, thank you for the kind words, Sisi. You know, sometimes when we speak, we couch things in symbolism. So when I said for the past decade or so, we have correctly trained the girl child on how to use a pepper spray and handle a firearm. It was not in the literal sense. I was referring to the fact that we have embarked on empowering the girl child on how to defend herself against perpetrators and how to boost her self-esteem such that there is no over-reliance on the presence of a man in her life. So it was symbolic. So I do not know of any organization that actually carries out training. I don't know who trained you, but I like the fact that you've got something that you carry, because it just proves that indeed we are a society where being a woman is an extreme sport. I know you posed it as a question and not a statement, but implicit in that question for me is something that says we are rehashing things that have been done and said before. No, my angel, this is totally different. It's totally different because we are not asking perpetrators to say, I won't do it again, which is what was contained in your question. We are not asking perpetrators to tell us their stories. That's not our primary focus. Tell us why you did this, and why you have stopped, and how you managed to stop, so that we can also teach others to stop. Our strategic objective, and we're very deliberate in adopting that strategic objective, is to unearth exemplary men. That's the overarching concept. But we are not oblivious to the fact that there are difficult conversations that must be held. And we are going to continue having those difficult conversations. That is why we refer to this as the men's fireside conversations, a safe space where men such as the one that Usisi referred to can open up and freely express themselves. We are always going to find something new that even researchers never thought of. And that's where we're going with this. Where we find things that have been done before that have succeeded in transforming the behavior and conduct of men, we will enhance those things. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. But we're finding new pockets of things that have not been done before, and we're exploiting those quite vigorously so that the outcome can be better. Lastly, as an example of what I said earlier, that we're not doing the same thing. We are moving away from the marquee approach to speaking to millions of men. Thank you.
In response to your question around the rural areas and reaching young people all over, I think it's important to note firstly that the program will go all over. It's not about our platform and where our reach is. We're one facilitator. Mr. Ace also said that it's open to all media houses. We are just showing our support. So the call would be to make sure that we get the newspapers in those areas to be telling that story. We will not have any exclusive rights to anything at all, but we want to show that we have the support. I can mention to you that we have other platforms too, but that's not the point, right? I mean, in the Eastern Cape, we're starting already in a rural area, and we will continue to be working, and we want others to take up the messaging and make sure that they spread that message. We are showing our support, and we will use the Sunday Times. We'll use in the Eastern Cape the Daily Dispatch, the Herald, the Talk of the Town, etc. We've got many of the platforms, but that's not really the point. SABC is our partner that reaches all over. Everybody, this is a national imperative. This is not something that must be the exclusiveness of one media partner at all. So we hope that others will take up the message and use it in their own way to take it to every boy, child, and family around the country.
I think maybe Mr. Slaser will touch on it later. I think I need to say this in support of what you're saying, that taking the inaugural MFC to an ancestral homestead defines a theme that the SABC and ourselves have agreed on. You will never see any MFC in some fancy hotel or casino. No. We have embarked on a very vigorous pursuit of partnerships with the kingdoms all over the country. When we hold an MFC, it will most probably be in a chief's kraal in some village, never in a fancy hotel. Because, you know what, we can't light fires inside the hotel, would be chased out. But if we sit in a chief's compound, in a king's palace, we're able to then gather in keeping with the genesis of this concept, that we're bringing back those opportunities for those who are ahead in terms of their knowledge and wisdom to download that, and those who are behind to imbibe and assimilate that wisdom so that they can then start with themselves in order to change others.
Ms. Makangwe? Okay, thank you. Can I answer the pepper spray question? As a Department of Social Development, we do that program. We roll it out. We are one of the departments. We are very big on that, and we think that is still important because it does empower, women and young women and girl child. We do it a lot in institutions of higher learning. We are working with over 50 universities, including TVET colleges. And out of the research that we've done with them, those are some of the things that we've asked them when we are procuring promotional material. They said to us, this is what we need because we are in a campus. We are studying early hours. Sometimes there's no visible security. You have to walk from one end to the other. And if you don't have anything, you don't feel secured. So these are some of the things that would like you, since you are coming to us and you say you want to empower us in this way. So we do buy pepper sprays and we do train on them. And yeah, they feel good and safe. Yeah, thank you. Let me step off and answer now the question that is directed to me. Yes, of course, you are right. It's a DOJ question, Department of Justice. It's not us. But because we work in the cluster, we know exactly what they are doing. They also know what we are doing. Earlier on when I spoke about the NSP, that we do have a NSP. One of the mandates of the NSP, Pillar 3, talks about legislation reforms. What women were saying in this country is that one of the reasons why we are not winning this is because of the justice system, or the criminal justice system is not friendly to women. So therefore they said, the first start is to look at legislative review. Yes, of course, strengthen prevention, intervention, but the biggest problem, it's after everybody has done their work, NPA has done it, health has done it, then comes to court, that whole a court case, it comes to zero. So Department of Justice was tasked to review the key legislations. In 2022, 3 major legislations were amended and were approved with speed and with key clauses that are really protecting women. One of them is the Criminal Procedure Act that talks about the bail conditions as well as the rights of the victims. It says when you are considering a bail, you need to consult a victim. A victim must have saying, a victim must be notified. A victim must be aware and be prepared that the perpetrator is going to be released. I need to know and I need to move. If I need to make arrangements that I don't want to bump to him on all of that, at least I still have an opportunity to do so. Unlike before where you don't even know, nobody has, taken care of this situation. You find yourself meeting this person unprepared. You start, it's a trigger and you break down. So those are some of the things that they've done. Number 2, the Sexual Amendment Act, the one that deals with rape. that is a very critical instrument that justice has done, in a sense that for the first time in South Africa, cases of gender-based violence, now the court must call a social worker or a probation officer to go and account or give they call it impact statement, meaning that you go and look at the significant others. You look also at the victim, herself. How was she affected, by this? How has it changed my behavior and all of that? So you do an impact statement and you share. When you share that impact statement, you are strengthening the case. The case, they're not only looking at, the forensic, looking at the criminality, but you are also bringing the human element to say, we are not talking about stats here. We are not talking about an incident, but we are talking about a person that has gone through a trauma, and these are the results, or this is the impact of that trauma at different levels, be it psychologically, socially, spiritually, behaviorally, and otherwise. So that is what the Act has done now. The last one is the Domestic Violence Act. As well, the Domestic Violence Act was amended to strengthen the issue of protection orders. I'm sure you remember that a lot of women died having protection order in their hands. They were not protected. The more they have it, the perpetrator says, I'm going to show you. So now the Act has been amended. It says before a woman is issued with a protection order, we must do a risk assessment to say, is it safe just to issue a protection order, and then the next thing the person dies? Or do I need to make sure that I find space, there are shelters, there are friends, there's family, like do an intervention prior to the issuing of the protection order, so that when you issue a protection order, you know that this person is safe, is not going back to their house and stay with the protection order. So those are just few clauses that I think have strengthened and promote the protection of women and children. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a question at the back. So the gentleman at the back, and then the gentleman number 2, and then number 3, sir. And then... Okay. Thanks.
One of the things that we do very well in the department is to go to communities and what we call community facilitation. When we go to communities, we speak to people in the languages that they understand and also in the spaces that they are in. Because you'll find that in rural areas, most of the time we speak in English. And people don't understand simple things like reporting. What do you mean when you say reporting? And you go to an area in Lusikisiki and people think that when you say reporting, you are saying report to the other family because, for instance, if a child is pregnant, or report komkhulu, not actually reporting to the police. So we do that a lot as a department. And part of the work that we're doing now is that even when we go and ask people to pledge, they must understand what this pledge is about. And we speak to them in their languages, and so that they can be able to also talk to us about what policy means to them. Where do we need to change policy, And some of the things that you find are very different from different communities, because communities are different. I always give the example of just a social grant. We once went to Engcobo, Emyolo, and the unintended consequences of giving money to women in that community was different to what we found at Bulwa, which is different provinces. You'll find that women were saying to us at Bulwa, because we have money and we can make decisions about their bodies, about our bodies, the men were withholding sex. And in Ngcobo, when we went there, the men were saying to us, stop this grant, because now this woman can make a decision about whom she can have sex with. So these are the unintended consequences that you'll never find anywhere, but you'll find in communities when you speak to people in the languages that they understand according to their experiences and culture.
So my name is Joshua Mtanyelo, and I'm a spokesperson for empowerment, and also I'm a president of Men of Purpose. So I've started working with men from 20 years ago, 2004. I've got teachers for every program that has to do with men. Also, Department of Social Development, they also gave me an award for dealing with the issues of children. It's a very difficult space to work in. So I've got two questions. I know that you're going back to your village to talk to men around fire. And I must say it's a beautiful exercise. We've done it. We call it bonfire talk. I'm coming here with the soul of a boy child, especially in Eastern Cape, where there are more children that dies in initiation schools. So my question is, in these talks, fire talks, will you invite also the principals of those schools, but also investigate what are they teaching those boys in those initiations? Because some of them, when they come from those initiation schools, they don't respect women. They treat women like things. So, because you can't come in a house, you find that there is water everywhere, and you take a mop and start mopping. You need to find where is the problem, the catch is, you see. So the issue of a boy child is the serious one that we need to really to look at it and find a solution. So I think that's the, so from the Department of Social Development, the question is, there's a lot of intervention. Even last week I was on a men's march. The other week I was on the 16th, there was another men's conference. The other week I was on the hours from the social development. It seems we are a trickling rain, where we are not yet a force river to address. You see, when we had a pandemic, there was one voice that speaks to the pandemic, and we overcame the pandemic. So when coming to men's issues, it seems we're voices, not a voice. We have superstars, but we're not yet a team that says, let's work together. So I don't know, from social development, can you really, from the government side, and let's get all the role players so that we fight this. This is pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I do follow the amazing work that you guys do. It's really commendable. Before I speak about the initiation, I want to start with a subtext therefrom. A secret fireside conversation, secret, held clandestinely, that we aim to have in partnership with the TSD and our partners, where we create a safe space from arrival to entrance to exit for young men who lost their manhood during initiation. There's a forgotten sector of men, a sector of men who could very well be part of those, that feel angry at society. Not necessarily at women, but angry at society generally, but then they'll find specifically women to be easier targets as outlets of their anger. A subtext of what we are starting will focus on those men. Plans between my foundation and the kingdom of Amaxhosa are at an advanced stage to establish a national initiation school. And when I say national, I mean the nation of Amaxhosa. A national initiation school where the Royal Ingcibi Ingcibike is the circumcision surgeon. The royal Ingcibi has been chosen by King Stau already, who will be the rector of the institution, with a dual role to oversee those who are actually practically handling the day-to-day running of the institution, but also to train those who are entering the space or already in the space on the proper handling of the situation. Now, I was in education for 20 years, both as a school principal and a university lecturer. The issue of curriculum is a very critical issue, in that as we unearth these exemplary men, we must also look at the curriculum that is dispensed at these so-called initiation schools. What are these schools initiating in this boy that he now starts behaving in a manner different to that he was before he went to that school? What is being initiated there? And we know what's happening there. We can't speak about it here. There are certain things that have deviated completely from what it used to be and what it should be in terms of the curriculum alone, without even looking at the physical health aspects of it, just the curriculum. For instance, there is now a new language that older men, like I'm chasing 60 now, which means I went to initiation more than 40 years ago. If I find this group of newly initiated young men together and listen to them, there's a lingo that has been developed which we don't understand. Now, if tradition was practiced by those of us who are older than them, why is it that they say things that we don't know? We are the ones who are supposed to be saying things that are new to them because we went through that route ahead of them. So it's the curriculum issue, and it does feed into what's happening in society. But I'm glad you asked that question, because I can then give you a straight answer. We are establishing a national royal initiation school with the Kingdom of Amaxhosa, piloting it there, and hopefully to take it everywhere where they practice the culture of circumcision. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you. Okay. As a department, we have established Men's Forum. The purpose of establishing the forums was to coordinate and ensure that we have, we're speaking in one voice. Our messages are complementing each other instead of competing. But now we find a problem that a lot of stakeholders, they do not want to belong to those forums. They want to sort of like elevate their work, against the other people that are in the space. And that is really not helpful. It's not helpful at all. Even now with the NSP that we have, there are people that they are not even aware that there's an NSP and they're in the space. Secondly, those that are aware, they are looking at it, looking for funding opportunities instead of saying, let me do the work that I do and make sure that I strengthen the work of those pillars so that at the end of the day, we are able to make an impact. And these are the things that we are talking about and saying when we are calling for collaboration, calling for, coordinating, calling for accountability, is because we know that when we do things together, there is so much that we can gain, and there is so much that we can learn from each other. There's space for civil society. There are things that government cannot do. We rely on civil society. Why? Because they're on the ground. You know, they understand the dynamics of those communities. They live with the communities. They can see things changing. They are able, before we get to know it, they already know what is happening in those communities. It's also important for CSOs to also accept the role of government, to say the role of government is to coordinate everyone, because you won't know who is doing what in KZN while you are in Limpopo. But where we are in a position where we are able to look at a country, at large and say, these are all the best practices. Bring them together. Let's consolidate what is working there. We're not saying we're going to copy it as it is, but we'll learn from it and say, how do I custom-made it for this community and make sure that we have better outcomes? So I think we are continuing to call for collaboration, for strengthening in our interventions, and also hold each other accountable. I want to emphasize on the issue of accountability, because when we're talking about accountability, people thinking that we're talking about funding. No, it has nothing to do with funding. It has to do with I must be accountable for the community that I serve, for the things that I said I'm going to do. So therefore, I must be held accountable. And I must also be able to hold accountable my next partner or NGO that is doing the similar work. In that way, it will help us to grow together and really strengthen our interventions. Thank you.
Thank you. We had one question, gentleman here in the middle, and then Gatlejo at the back, and I think those are the last two. Oh, and sorry. So we'll take the gentleman in the middle, then we'll take Mr. Lucas. Sorry, Gatlejo, we'll end off with you with the last question. Apologies.
Good day. My name is Gorat Kritsani. I am an independent public sector consultant. Having been in management consulting for a number of years. So my hand is up in terms of pledging for GBV. My hand is up. I'm going to address, I think, about two issues, and I'll try to be very short. SABC, thank you very much for this. SABC, I see it, we all see it as a national broadcaster, and that means we need to have lots of stakeholders on that slide. I don't know, maybe there are, but I don't see them. So we need to drive stakeholder mobilization and enhancement, especially insofar as the private sector is concerned. We can help in terms of doing that. Hence I said my hands is up. Because this is a national imperative. GBV, from a government perspective, is one of the programs that are there, in terms of driving the public sector of government. So maybe we need to mobilize around that and use SABC as the go-to in terms of communication. 2018, there was a summit, going back to government. 2018, there was a summit. 2020, the NSP was released. If we were to take a step back and say, where are we? If we were to do a monitoring and evaluation, quick process in terms of just to go back into why was NSP established, are the goals and objectives thereof realized. And the last one is, I'm happy that Ms. Mkhwane, you articulated that there is coordination around the 6 pillars, because initially you spoke about pillar 2 and pillar 4, and I wanted to ask, what about the other 6 pillars? At least you also mentioned accountability. But then, on the same breath, you also mentioned the fact that it's just DSD and DOJ that are coming to the party. I'm speaking from a situation of little knowledge. How is the coordination around government insofar as the 6 pillars are concerned? Because we are, as a country, we are very good in terms of coming up with nice programs, nice initiatives. But when it comes to implementation thereof, I think we are still left wanting. Thank you very much.
I think, are you happy to answer, or would you like to continue just with the questions and then we answer together?
Oh, thank you very much. My name is Lucas Matlachani. I'm from an organization called World Changers Candidate. Thank you for fellow country women and men and the panelists here. Mine is not so much of a question, it's more of just like an input. Our organization deals with drugs and substance abuse. So I'm coming on the presentation that you made earlier on here. For me, a day like this is what a day at what a place. Because in 2016, this organization lost Miss Hope Zinde through, I would say, something that was driven by drug and substance abuse. We all maybe know the story that the son actually just chopped her and put her into the car. And it was at that time that we were also invited by the SABC to come and partner and try and drive the message. Yeah, thank you. Try and drive the message. Our organization has been in the space for over 22 years. The first person that we assisted is Kabelo Mabalani over 22 years ago. Every year on the 1st of September, we're celebrating another year of sobriety. And when you're talking about changing just that one person, we're talking from an experience of knowing what changing one person can be. Kabelo Mabalani was a mean to the society, and mainly because of drugs. When he would take drugs, he would become something else. But over the years since then, and I must say this, as you're working on this program, you must know that the poll quotes all keep on changing. Today, when we're talking about men, I'm actually still struggling here to say which men are we talking about, because kids are already seeing themselves as men. They're doing what men are supposed to be doing. So in the space that we are struggling with even dealing with the kids as little as 13 who sees themselves as men. And I think yesterday I was in a conference called by the Central Drug Authority discussing more of policy. As a country, we need to be realistic one day and come back to our senses. The country needs a serious legislation reformation on a lot of things, from the rights, from the drugs. Do you know that in South Africa, the criminal justice system on drugs and substance abuse is that if a person is caught with drugs, they can only be fined for 3 years or 3,000 rands. At most, it's about 5 years and 15,000 rands. And that's when you're talking about drug dealers. Unless we look into that space, we can talk to people as much as we want to, but drugs are the main generator of violence and all other social ills. And I'm sure some of you would remember the incident in Midrand where 4 boys drugged this girl and whatever that happened after that. So we doing a lot of interventions with the schools, with individuals, with young people. What we finding that it actually start with that. It start with alcohol, with drug, with substance abuse. So it is, as you will be traversing through the country, can that really be very central? Because it is an issue in the country. We're dealing with issues whereby kids tell you that they started at the age of 10, now they are stealing, and those are seeing themselves as men. And this weekend, from tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, kids are planning what they call pens down, shut down. And we're running that campaign. If you could just go on our page, on our TikTok page, at World Changers Candidate, see the comments of the kids. You might actually even identify your child there, because kids are just going there with comments saying anything and everything. And one thing that kids don't understand is as we pass the law as a country, they get misunderstood. Kids today, they're thinking weed, it's legal. So they're taking weed, and how it transforms and reconfigure their brains to do things that they're not supposed to do. And also the drug dealers have taken advantage also, adding more stuff into the weed that they are taking. And that is why you find a lot of kids, like as early as 15, they are already hallucinating. They're talking to themselves. So we are dealing with a serious problem in this country of legislation reformation. We have also started a petition to say, can we have harsher sentences also on drug and substance abuse? We started a petition before as well to fight against the Bella Bill, which wanted to allow schools to sell alcohol for fundraising purposes. Our issue here in this country is more about the kind of laws that we are passing. So as a society, as human beings, we haven't changed. It's the laws that changed us. So the kids that we're talking about, the lingo that they're using now, is because they have changed. But if they were to stick to the tradition and culture, we wouldn't have been where we are today. So I'm just appealing to say, as I'm going to sign the pledge as well, the issue of drug and substance abuse in terms of legislation reformation need to be looked into. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Can we just have the last question at the back, and then we'll answer all the questions collectively at the end.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Katlel Tsolo, and I'm the CSI manager for the SABC. To you, Mr. Gerard, the question that you asked about why are you not seeing a lot of stakeholders there? We do work with a lot of stakeholders. Currently, we have public service announcements that are running with about 8 CEOs, including UNICEF. So we do try. Now, the challenge that we get, I think there must be some sort of coordination when it comes to GBV. I don't know how. But the challenge that we get really from our office when it comes to public service announcements, to the issue of GBV and many other issues, mental health, is that at times you get organizations coming asking for that airtime, but they are actually flying from Johannesburg to Bloemfontein in order to go to Kwakwa, yet they can drive to Kwakwa. Now, we are not experts in the field, but we assist NGOs to give the message. So I think with us, as I'm saying, there must be some sort of coordination that is clear, and the SABC will be there, most of the time to see how best we support the social issues. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll just have the last 2 questions answered, and then I'll call on Mr. Sklaso to close up for us. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. The question on collaboration. I just spoke to areas that concerns the department, but I mean the NSP is for everyone in the country. As I've said, that it consists of 6 pillars. And the intention of the NSP was to coordinate, because as we've said, that we've been in the sector for years, but we've got little to show, simply because we're working against each other with limited resources. Hence, there is a call now to say, let's collaborate, let's learn from each other, let's work together to have better outcomes. So there are 6 pillars. The first pillar is about accountability and coordination. It is led by the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability, since they are the custodian of the NSP. But what is good about this is that they are not working alone. The co-chair is a person from NGO. Because if we do not have co-chairs from NGOs, then it becomes a government document. It remains a government document, and yet the implementing partners are community development, community centers and all of that, or the NGO sector. The second pillar I've already talked about is it's prevention and social cohesion. It's led by basic education together with the NGOs in that sector. However, as a department, we are contributing because we are also big on prevention. The third one is the one that speaks to justice, the reforms. It's led by DOJ together with the NGOs that are in that sector, like, you know, a number of NGOs that are dealing with legislation representing women and all of that. They contribute in that sector. The fourth one is our pillar that we are leading as a department, response, care and support. We are also co-chairing it with NGOs that are in the sector. We've got quite a number, and we are meeting on a monthly basis. We have more than 50 people that log in, and we're dealing with issues that concerns us as a sector. The fifth one is economic empowerment. It is led by the economic cluster. They are sharing the space. Small businesses there, TTIC is there. They are looking at the economic issues together with the NGOs against that are dealing with women empowerment. And the emphasis on there is to say, for women to really, take a decision to leave their partners, we need to deal with the issues of economy, because most of them, they're economically dependent on men. That's why it makes it difficult for them to, take a decision to move away from those relationships or terminate them. That's why there is that element of empowerment. The last one, it's about information research and management. It is led by the DPME, because it's the custodian of research in the country, together with other institutions like MRC. They also serve in there and say the research that they are conducting, it is important that we create that research hub. And when we are reviewing our strategies, when we are reviewing the policy and reviewing the existing programs, we need then to look at what the research is saying, and we'll have that economic hub. So I'm not saying it's working well. There are challenges, of course, of consistency and attendance and all of that, but we are trying our level best. I can speak for the pillar that I am convener. I'm one of the co-conveners for Pillar 4. As I'm saying that we do have, we are attending on a monthly basis, and we are sharing programs. Even now, for 16 days, we have a program as a pillar, not as a department. So it's one of the benefits that I can say we are deriving from this collaboration. Then I'd like to comment on the issue of substance abuse. I'm also one of the people that are working in the sector for many years when it comes to substance abuse. I agree with you that we need to look at our legislation, but the international community is saying to us a balanced approach, because if you just focus on one aspect, the other aspects are going to make those demands, and it's going to be a challenge. So very important that we have a balanced approach. One is to, of course, deal with or reform the legislation, because some of the legislations that we are using are quite outdated. For an example, the current Act of 2008, Act 70, it's an Act of 008. It's outdated. There's a lot of changes. I mean, when you are dealing with substance abuse, you are chasing a moving target. Today is this. Tomorrow, the drug that they use, the nyaupe that they're using now, is different from the nyaupe that they're using yesterday. So you've got to keep up with those changes. You've got to know, you've got to be on top of your game, because if you take long, you will be left behind. And whatever the interventions that you're coming up with, they will not yield any results. So we agree that the legislation needs to be changed. But one of the things that we have just done as a department, we have, I'm not sure if you are aware, that we went to Cabinet, and Cabinet on the 20th of, November, yes, approved our policy. It's a very comprehensive policy that we came up with, addressing the issues of prevention, addressing the issues of treatment, addressing the supply, the supply reduction, the police, because it's very important how our borders are managing, drug trafficking. it has a bearing on our communities, because we can do things here at a high level, but what comes in and goes out is very important. So those are the things that this policy is promoting, and this policy is going to help us to amend the current legislation and many other legislation. Lastly, on the issue of substance abuse, our biggest problem is the availability. Most of the countries that are doing well now, for instance, we are learning from them. Mexico had a crisis of young people abusing alcohol and substances, but they've turned things around now. Why? Because they dealt with the issue of availability. We've been crying about availability, that in the country we've got too much availability of alcohol. Too much availability. If you look at the advert, I mean, young people, they're exposed to adverts of alcohol maybe 40 times before they get to bed. And when you look at that, it's not just an ordinary advert. They are selling a lifestyle, to young people. To what extent can they resist this? Those are the issues that we must confront. We have, and I'm sure if you are in the sector, you remember, there was a legislation, a liquor bill, Liquor Act actually. Then it was amended, but it never went through and be approved. And there was a lot of good things that went into that legislation. For instance, we spoke about taverns, and any outlet must be 500 meters away from church, from school, and all of that. There were quite a number of measures that we're trying to put in place. It was speaking about reduction of alcohol, reducing, making sure that there's less alcohol, no advert, and all of that. But what happens to that legislation? It never got to cabinet, and we never said anything as communities to say we want that legislation to be approved, because a lot of work has gone into it, and approving that legislation will change so much, because it will influence the programs that we'll have, it will influence the behaviors that we have. So yeah, we are trying our level best, but we need more voices to demand some of these things to begin to be in place, because we are the ones that are in communities and we are feeling the pinch. So yeah, I'm encouraging you to speak more and fight more for these things to happen. Thank you so much.
And everybody for your questions. We really appreciate your inputs as well. We're going to be closing off our session very shortly. I'm going to call Mr. Spelele Slaso, who is our GM for PBS Radio, to please come and do our closing remarks. Thank you so much. Do you want to sit or stand? You good?
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very challenged. I never stand anywhere not talk about money, so I'll try not to talk about money here. But if I do, and you have it, you can bring it still. There's three things I actually want to say before I do my closing remarks. Actually, before I actually say those three things, let me thank you, EmpowerWorks, for coming. I think we sent you the invite on Saturday, and today it's Wednesday, and you are here. And we are working with you. We do amazing things with you, with Metro FM. And thank you so much for that support. And platforms like this is for us to come together and make sure that we specifically to shape the role of the man in the society. Those three things I wanted to say before I make my closing remarks, Mr. Binza, my COO, is that, as you can hear, I need a budget next year to go start fires in different provinces. Colleagues, I did say I'm challenged. I'll never not talk about money. But on a serious note, the budget is needed, because I think someone said that we do these things, we get excited, and then they fizzle. My analysis, which I can reference a lot of experiences, is because the budget was not enough. I look after the public broadcasting stations of the SABC. It's strange for somebody who's looking after the public broadcasting stations of the SABC to always talk about money. It's precisely for one reason. PBS role is to shape the society. So if I don't have the money to do that, the society will not be shaped. It will be shaped by other forces. So Mr. Binza had that budget to start the fires. But Ace, when you were talking earlier on, when you were saying that people gathered around the fire, I was hoping you're going to add there and say they also listen to radio when they are around the fire. So I'll add it for you. And thank you so much for such an inspiring, I don't know how to call it. I don't want to say it's a speech, a talk. It's a rallying call for all men in South Africa. Mr. Goddard Kitsani, did I say it right, sir? Thank you so much, man, for what you raised. As much as you raised it towards the end, you said the private sector. I picked it up quickly because that's where I believe, even if the money does not come, certain partnerships will assist us. The fireside chats in Bali, they are going to rural areas, and the roads can be challenging there. It would be nice to get a Toyota giving us the cars to drive, as opposed to me, again, putting pressure on Mr. Binza's budget. So I certainly have your number already, believe it or not. I'm going to call you. You're going to assist me to get those private partners to ensure that what we are doing here doesn't just fizzle out. We carry on and do it. Bra Lucas, you also said something nice, and I thought it's an opportunity to take a dig at my media partners here and DSD TV as well, and Arena Holdings, to tell you that you will get the live feed from the SABC. Colleagues, I think I don't want to say much. I just want to stand here and thank each and everyone for coming here. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. This is a project that is sitting, is for the whole of SABC. It's sitting mostly at radio, precisely because of the language issues that Mbali from City Press you were raising. There's a problem with comprehension. Lumka from DSD said that to me. And that comprehension, she explained it nicely, that when you say to someone, report this thing, they don't know what you mean. They don't know what you mean. So I believe the African language stations that unpack all the issues will be at the forefront of this. There was something that was also mentioned a little bit, that we are going to work with different kingdoms. The African language stations, they represent each and every culture, Batswana, Basotho, you name it, Venda, Xhosa, Zulu. We are talking to different kingdoms to be involved and host us in these fireside chats that we are doing. And now that I said I won't talk about money, but now that I'm saying this, I'm thinking that our partners from the government will pull in Cocta as well for us. Not for money, but if it's there, I'll welcome it. Colleagues, I think what Lydia asked me to do was not what I'm doing right now, but being the person that I am, I will take that opportunity to say we need a strong, financially sustainable broadcaster of the SABC so that it can address the social ills that we deal with every day. So my role was just to come here and stand here and smile and be happy that we've got our social partners working with us. We invited different people from different places, including journalists, that some of them have not said anything, but I know as soon as we close here, we'll be talking and they'll be pledging their support to make sure that this does not fizzle out. I believe in action. And the conversations that we are having here, they tell me that there'll be action. In fact, I'm sitting here with the dates. I can tell you in October 2025, we'll be in Northwest with the fireside chats. In April, we're here in Joburg. So we already have the dates of where we're doing these things. So that gets me excited because the action, it makes this thing move. I want to thank you, Bryce, with Ubuntu Transformation Foundation. I want to thank you, DSD, Department of Social Development. Thank you, Arena Holdings. And I look forward to City Press also joining us. Everyone who's here, you're starting something whereby we're going to define a man in South Africa as caring, loving, and forward-thinking. So I would like to thank each and everyone who's here because this is, some of you took off from work and come here. Some of you, this is what you do. You've got other projects that you are doing. Bra Lucas, you are busy fighting the kids that are smoking this ganja. But you are here to support this one as well, because all together we are here to make sure that we build the country that we want. I think, colleagues, in closing, my pledge on behalf of the SABC, I'll pledge on behalf of the SABC, Mr. Binza, is that we will deploy all our radio stations, all of them, to every corner of South Africa. And when I'm saying all of our radio station, I'm not talking less than 27 million listeners in 1 week, adults only. I'm not counting anyone below the age of 18. That's a massive reach. And I don't believe that we can fail in what we want to do. I suppose, Bryce, with your confidence of saying we'll deliver 1 million signatures by the 16 days' time, I guess it's because you trust the might of the SABC. But I'm standing here also trusting the might of a written word from Arena, Sowetan. Those are the papers that our people read. As you can see, we're a media house that has brought in another media house. Any other media house that wants to come, it can come. Because this problem is not just for one person to sort out. Ushilo Mawati, it's not just a government thing. That's, I guess, I don't want to use the wrong words, Katleho, civil society, right? It includes all of us once we say civil society, including the management consultant that will bring me the money. I said I won't talk about money. But ladies and gentlemen, with all of that, let me greet you and say good afternoon. And for coming here, thank you very much.